Niceness is often mistaken for safety, but kindness alone doesn't really regulate a room. See, one's tone can be gentle, and their words can be soft, and their intentions can be pure, and still the atmosphere can feel charged. See, not all tension is necessarily loud, and not all pressure is visible. See, sometimes what makes a space feel unsafe is what isn't said, like what's carried beneath the surface. See, pleasantness can mask unease, and charm can be a camouflage for desperation. Politeness can become more of a performance. And for those on the receiving end, that dissonance, it can be exhausting. See, kindness that comes from anxiety, it doesn't really settle, and approval seeking doesn't necessarily soothe. And when words say, "You're safe here," the energy could feel like, the energy at least behind it, could be like a pleading for validation, and the body detects that kind of mismatch. And the body rarely ever lies. See, safety is it's not about whether someone is harmless per se. I think it's more about whether they are settled, whether they are present or rooted. It's more about whether connection can breathe in their presence, whether the tension is absent, or whether the silence isn't treated like a threat. See, there's a kind of niceness that demands nothing on the surface at least, but underneath it, there's this mountain of expectation that is palpable. It could be the thank you smile. It could be the over-explaining, the heightened sense of awareness of being perceived as someone who's good. And you see, each gesture seems generous until it becomes clear that it's actually being offered in exchange for closeness. And this is where many interactions begin to unravel, because presence that isn't really honest always comes at a cost. And it may not be malicious, but it's more likely unexamined fear of not being wanted unless everything is pleasant, right? The fear of rejection if the mask begins to slip, the fear of being invisible without actually overextending yourself. See, in this kind of dynamic, niceness becomes more of a negotiation. And that isn't where intimacy finds rest. See, it's more where performance lives. And performance, it basically exhausts everyone who's involved, especially the one who's quietly scanning for safety. And kindness without groundedness, it tends to create this sense of confusion. On the one hand, she hears the right words, but then her body doesn't really relax. And it's not because of anything that is obviously wrong, but more so because there's no stillness in the air. There's no sense of ease. There's no true emotional resting place for her to come to. And the most dangerous dynamic is not conflict as much as it is this subtle dissonance. That moment where everything looks like it's okay, but nothing actually feels okay. When the conversation flows, but connection doesn't really flow. And when kindness is present, but no one is breathing deeply because of its presence or lack thereof. This is the difference between politeness and peace. See, politeness says all the right things, whereas peace, it requires nothing to be said at all. Politeness would seek for approval, and peace just holds space. Politeness is concerned with being perceived as safe, right? Whereas peace is what safety actually feels like. And the gap between the two isn't necessarily moral. It's more emotional. it's somatic. It's nervous system deep, if you will. And when safety is real, the body will feel it. It'll sense it. Like the breath will deepen, one's guard will lower, the eyes tend to soften. But when niceness is laced with unspoken needs, so that's when the body stays alert. Not in fear of violence, but in preparation for some sort of management there. Managing the unsaid things, managing the undercurrents of please like me kind of a vibe, managing the weight of emotional energy that never actually lands, never roots itself, never experiences a relaxed state. This is the invisible work that so many women are doing in spaces where nothing looks wrong on the surface, but everything feels off, because they've learned to feel beyond the words. They've learned to listen with the whole body, if you will. They've learned, in essence, to protect themselves, not from aggression, but from emotional fog. And when that fog arrives, wearing the mask of niceness, it's even more disorienting. It becomes harder to name. It becomes easier to doubt. And that's what makes this dynamic so painful for both people. See, the one who's offering niceness believes that they're doing everything right? And the one who's receiving it feels this tension that they can't really justify. And so the person offering the kindness usually feel rejected, whereas the one who's receiving it feels guilty. But the real issue isn't goodness. It's more so groundedness. See, there's no invitation to exhale in this space built on performance. There's only the subtle suggestion that something must be given back. It's almost owed back, whether it's a smile or a thank you or a reassurance or even a role that you're playing. And safety never requires a role. See, safety just allows. It doesn't ask. It doesn't demand presence. It just makes room for presence. This is the invitation. The invitation is to stop measuring success by surface level behavior, and instead to start attuning to what the space beneath all of that behavior actually feels like. Ask yourself, does this connection require work? Or does the stillness feel heavy? Does the silence ask to be filled? See, if the answer to any of these is yes, then what's being offered isn't peace. It's more so pressure. Even when that is wrapped up in softness, the pressure is still pressure. And over time, that pressure becomes suffocating. That's, I think, what leads people to leave. Not because they don't care, but because they've never found room to breathe. And when the kindness is used to secure love, it becomes a contract of sorts. See, when the kindness comes from peace, though, it becomes this resting place. The work is to become that kind of a resting place, to make space, if you will, for someone else to be fully human, without worrying about how it will be received. And that can't happen if connection is based on impression and the management of it. It only happens when we've come home to ourselves in such a way, in essence, where we've come home to ourselves to stop outsourcing that stability, to stop offering niceness in exchange for reassurance. When we come home to ourselves, in essence, to be able to sit with our discomfort long enough that it no longer needs to be smoothed over with charm, right? Because charm that covers anxiety isn't connection. It's actually a form of control. even when it looks gentle, even when it sounds sweet, right? What we offer, even unconsciously, it really communicates more than we really realize. A glance maybe that seeks for approval, right? Or a joke that begs for ease. A compliment that subtly asks to be liked in return. So each one carries this hidden request. And over time, those requests begin to accumulate. And the relational space becomes then crowded because there's no room for rest, there's only room for response. And rest is the prerequisite for trust. Like, not the explanation, not the constant communication, but and not even like perfect emotional like language that's expressed, but just rest by itself. See, without it, connection just becomes a series of micro demands, if you will, and each demand, however small it is a quiet withdrawal from the account of safety. See, that's the emotional math that we rarely see. It's not necessarily about doing one big thing wrong. It's more so about the compound effect, if you will, of constantly needing things to feel okay in order that you would feel okay. That kind of presence requires management. And management is not intimacy. What creates intimacy, though, is containment. Not in the sense of control, but in the sense of someone who knows how to like hold their own weight, for starters. Someone who can actually witness discomfort without collapsing underneath it. Someone who can actually hear the silence without panicking. It's someone who doesn't need another person to, in essence, perform emotional labor so that they can feel settled in some way. See, this is what makes someone feel safe. Not kindness alone, at least, but that sense of containment. And this is not because emotions are hidden, but more so it's because they're actually not leaking into this space without actually gaining consent first. See, containment isn't cold. Containment is respectful. It says, I know what I carry, and I don't necessarily need you to carry this for me. Moreover, it says, you don't owe me access just because I've been nice to you, right? It would go on further to say things like, this space belongs to both of us, not just to my unmet needs. So let's together synergistically engage. See, without containment, niceness becomes manipulation, I would say. Not intent, more so functionally, but not intentionally, because it creates this dynamic where kindness isn't offered freely. It's offered to earn something back, right? And love cannot grow in spaces where that feels like a transaction, right? See, containment makes room for both people to exist, not just the one who's trying to be good, per se, and not just the one who's performing softness in hope of finally being received well, right? But when we stop needing to be perceived in a certain way, it's then that we stop filling the room with invisible pressure. And that's where safety begins, I would say. See, safety isn't the absence of mistakes. Safety is more so the absence of demand. It's the absence, if you will, of pressure to perform in order to be received, right, by another. So that's what most people, I think, are searching for, and often without even realizing it. They're not searching for perfection and not for gestures either, or even niceness. I think they're searching more so for the kind of presence that says, I'm not here to manage you. I'm actually here just to meet you in the midst of this moment. That meeting can only happen when the space is clear, when presence doesn't really arrive already full of unspoken requests, right? When the connection isn't necessarily an audition for one's worth, and when kindness doesn't really function as a contract. This is what it means, I think, to embody safety. It's not about being soft. It's not about being non-threatening. It's more so about being integrated, regulated, rooted. It's about being in such a deep relationship with yourself that another person's energy can actually enter that space without immediately being like absorbed or evaluated or even being shaped. See, in that space, another person can actually feel a sense of freedom, free to breathe, free to speak without buffering, free to rest without a sense of guilt, free to bring their whole self without needing to decode the unspoken expectations that usually are playing, especially on our end. This is the difference, I think, between kindness and safety. Kindness is usually offered, but safety is created. And that creation, it requires clarity, it requires containment and the sense of one's grounded presence. See, we're not bad people for missing this. We're not necessarily broken for not being taught these things. But once we see it, once we see this, we are responsible for actually choosing a different pathway. See, that different way actually starts here, in this moment. So, if you would, pause before seeking approval, and ask what's alive beneath the niceness that you're offering. And then track the difference, if you will, between giving freely and giving to be liked. And then instead start practicing a presence that doesn't require performance in return. This is, I think, what makes people feel safe. Not in our intentions as much as in our impact. Not as much in our words as much as in our regulation. And not the labels that we necessarily apply to ourselves, like nice or good or respectful, but the quality of stillness that we are bringing into the room. See, nice isn't bad, but then again, nice isn't enough, because love doesn't just land in politeness. It actually lands in a sense of peace. And peace begins where performance ends. I hope this has served you well. Let me know your questions or your anecdotes in the comments. I'd love to hear and engage.